Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GPAWS talk today. I am very glad to present and welcome John Osborne, who is the National Director of Project Welcome Home Troops. It's a program of the nonprofit organization International Association for Human Values. John has been teaching specialized courses in human development and leadership to public, corporates, government, and military professionals for over 40 years. Long journey in this field. John has also spoken at the United Nations, the World Bank, the World Health Organization, and many other technology companies that we're familiar with in the Bay Area and outside. He's also a speaker at Harvard University and Wharton School. I will hand over to John and let him say a few more words about him and walk us through this lovely talk on harnessing the healing power of breath. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruchika, and everyone for allowing me to be here. And I'd like to begin today by taking you on a slightly imaginary journey. Imagine that here in the United States, there's an outbreak of a great pandemic. The pandemic exists all over the world, but there are at least 300,000 or 400,000 cases of people coming down with this disease, and 22 people are dying of it every day in the United States. Imagine if you knew about a pandemic like that, it would be on the front page of the New York Times, right? Well, actually, it does exist. Pandemic has a name. It's called post-traumatic stress disorder. It's affected at least 300,000 or 400,000 Americans coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq, soldiers and contractors and civilians. And 22 vets a day are committing suicide because of the effects of this disease. So it's a big problem. And I'm part of an organization that has one solution or one method of dealing with this problem, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. But first, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about myself, what I'm doing here and why I'm here. I am a retired venture capitalist, and so I've spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley. And also I've been meditating for about 45 years and teaching different forms of meditation and self-development for about 40 years. Two reasons that I'm here. One has to do with a person named Walter, whom I'm happy to tell you about, and another has to do with my dad. My dad was a World War II hero in Pacific Theater, was nominated for a Silver Star for knocking down 48 kamikaze planes who were trying to shoot down his ship in 24 hours, and always sort of held the values of military service as I was growing up. Now, you probably figured out from my age that I grew up during the Vietnam era, and as hard as he wanted to get me in military service, I was running the other way. I was not at all interested. And it was only because of an experience I had with my dad late in life. Right before he died, I took him to see the movie Saving Private Ryan. We had about a 4-hour conversation afterwards, and it was then that the light went on in my mind as to why my dad was so interested in getting me involved in the military. Because for my dad, being in the service, as they used to say in those days, laid the groundwork for him for a lifetime of service. I grew up in a small community in upstate New York, and my dad organized the Volunteer Ambulance Corps, and he raised money for the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, and later on he joined a human development committee that took little old ladies to the hospital when he had to. So being in the military provided him with a basis for a lifetime of service. And it was only at the end of his life that I understood that when he wanted to get me in the military, it was because he wanted me to have those values. So when I started getting involved with soldiers, I did it and continue to do it in memory and in honor of my dad, who passed away shortly thereafter. I was teaching these breathing techniques to civilians it was about 1996 in Santa Barbara, when I got a call from a psychologist who said, I think I have someone who could use some of your breathing and meditation skills. He said, but I'm not sure if he's suitable for you guys, for your course. And when I asked him why, he said, because this person is drug addicted, he's violent, he's suicidal, he's a danger to himself and to others, and oh, by the way, he's a Vietnam vet. And so what I did on that course was to give the course away so that someone else could teach it, and I became the buddy of this person whose name was Walter. And he had a little bit of a difficult time with the meditation and the yoga and the breathing, but he got through the course, and I saw that it had transformed him a lot. And I lost touch with Walter until about 5 years later. I was doing a meet and greet, kind of a reception in Los Angeles, and there was a long line of people that were coming up to say hello to me. And All of a sudden I saw this person, he was about 6'6" in a suit, and I vaguely recognized him. And he came up and he sort of gave me a hug and lifted me off the ground, and I'm like, who is this person? And he said, John, he said, I'm Walter. And Walter, by that time, was the head of data processing services for the County of Santa Barbara. He owned a car, he had a girlfriend, he had an apartment, he was off his drugs, and he was leading a happy life. Now, I'm not sure what the complete connection between the course that I took with Walter and his present state, but it planted a seed in me. I thought, wow, for people who are in such anguish, having such trouble being in the present moment, this might be something that would be useful. So about 8 years ago, I was asked again by a colleague to join them in doing a brief introduction at a vet center. For those of you who are not very familiar with the military, since the Vietnam War and people coming back having so much trouble transiting to civilian life, the VA has set up these sort of neighborhood vet centers where vets can come and talk to each other and maybe get some help with their processing of papers and join a group and meet other vets and deal with their problems. And I taught some just initial breathing techniques to some of these vets, and the results were so transformative. These are people that were running red lights in Santa Monica, California, because they were afraid that there was an IED at the side of the road. How many people were familiar with PTS, some of the symptoms of PTS? Some of them are memories which crowd out the real estate inside them to the point where they can't be in the present moment. Emotional numbness, having trouble with extremes in emotions, especially anger, suicidal thoughts, depression, sleeplessness, and for a lot of them, a tendency to self-medicate, either with drugs or alcohol. These are people that have either seen something or lost someone or done something that they regret hugely and come back. And the problem with PTS is that it doesn't go away just by itself. I treated a lot of vets that were even in the Vietnam War. 40 years later, they're still having problems. I'll tell you more about this in a little bit, but I thought you'd like to meet some of my students. So we're going to start by seeing a short video with some of their experiences, and then we'll talk a little bit more about what I do. Okay?
When I was a freshman in high school, 9/11 happened, and I think that kind of planted the seed for my eventual going into the military.
My name is Don Rodriguez. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I went into the military in 1985.
You can't walk through that amount of bloodshed and bodies and black bags and you just can't walk through that and not be affected by it.
We spent 16 months on the ground. We were actually the longest unit to serve in Iraq. And then I deployed to Iraq again in 2009 for another 9 months.
You know, you have to kind of detach from your humanity to do that over there. And you come back and you have a hard time reattaching to normal civilian life.
You could see somebody die on the sidewalk in front of you and step right over them, keep on going. They're not personal to me.
I think the death and the dying that I saw there grabbed a hold of me daily. We were getting mortared daily.
I realized within a few weeks of being there that the odds of any of us living through a year there didn't feel very good at all.
On the second deployment, there was a rocket attack on my base that killed 3 guys and injured another 1.
When the next generation of roadside bombs, the EFP, came in, I was terrified because they would go right through our armor. But even when you're on base, I mean, they're firing rockets in, they fire mortars in.
We'd been there less than 30 days, and we lost 1 helicopter with everybody on board. It was shot down.
Well, I came back injured, came back blind. Really had no support of any family or anything. I felt alone, isolated.
For me, when I got back, life was the same. For my girlfriend at the time, apparently I was very different, very totally changed, and she would tell me this and I never understood it.
I know I lost something, but I'm not really quite sure what it was that I lost.
I had changed enough and didn't recognize it enough that it actually put a lot of strain on my marriage, and was one of the factors that led up to what turned into a divorce.
My fiance and I started having some trouble, and I was drinking a lot.
I had bad dreams, panic attacks, anger. I had a lot of anger.
The anger that was there, became my best friend. And if I wasn't angry about something, I was looking for something to get angry about.
Roger was never abusive, but I was afraid of his anger. You start just not knowing what it's going to be like one day to the next.
She didn't know when I would get angry, what I would get angry about, and it would happen so quickly that she wasn't prepared for it.
There is no graduated, scale. It's 0 to 10, that's it.
Something unknown would flare up something in me, and I would lose track of what was going on around me.
I lived on antidepressants, which I have lived on for the last 4 years. I've been on every one that's probably been available.
The life as I saw it inside, if I have to continue life this way, it's not worth living.
I felt lost. I attempted suicide twice. Substance abuse. Just anything that would ease the pain.
I white-knuckled it for about 9 months, and then it, just the nightmares and, the flashbacks, all that stuff just finally overwhelmed me.
They tried putting me through a prolonged exposure, cognitive processing therapy, all the other different therapies that they could possibly think of, and it helped a little bit more, but I was still in a hole.
If it's not too personal a question to ask you, can you describe what it felt like being in that hole?
Like being in hell. If you, whatever the worst thing you could possibly imagine about hell, that's where I was at.
I think that there's been combat trauma and post-traumatic stress syndrome as long as men and women have been fighting wars. Project Welcome Home Troops started in Southern California about 7 years ago, answering a need for some vets at a vet center who wanted to learn more about breathing, stress management, meditation, in an effort to help them manage their combat trauma symptoms and post-traumatic stress syndrome.
The first time I took the course in Fort Worth, Texas was 10 months ago.
I had no idea what to expect, and as we got into the program and started to do the exercises and do the breathing and so on, I thought, yeah, this might be all right, this might help.
At first I thought it was a little bit hokey, for first coming in. And
the more we got into it, the more it stopped being just a bunch of hippie nonsense. It started dislodging certain internal barriers, I guess, I had built up.
I think also by like day 2 or 3, you started building that camaraderie between the people within the group, which was nice.
The end session there where we did the power breathing was the ultimate. I thought, wow, I was just so relaxed.
Right away with the breathing exercises, it taught me how to relax.
It's almost like you have to get way deep down in there with all of that deep breathing, and then it just seems to take it all and you exhale it all out.
My son stopped over and we're shooting the breeze, and he's a pretty direct kid. He says, "Hey Pop, VA got you on some new drugs or what?" So I thought, it's not just me that notices it.
When I finished the course, I didn't notice the changes immediately. Everyone around me did.
I felt like I did before I ever went to Iraq the first time.
It's surreal to have someone come up to you and say something like, "Why are you happy all the time? You're smiling again. Did something change?"
I am a different person now. Just night and day.
you know, you're really, it's like you're you again from 3 or 4 or 5 years ago.
My ex, he said, I really like this new guy, you know. You remind me of the guy that I had met years ago.
So I can focus and concentrate better when I'm at school, and I can be around other people.
My mood goes like this, as opposed to spikes.
The particular techniques that we teach are very effective and very popular with veterans. Number one, because they like learning something that they can do on their own. They're very self-reliant, independent people. Number two, it's preferable to a lot of people to other treatments like psychiatric drugs or long-term psychotherapy. And number three, it's highly effective. And they like doing it in a class with other vets. They bond with other vets. They do the program ongoing with other vets. And many of them now are out finding other vets that need to take the program.
I don't know, the breathing just opened up something in me where it's just, I could just feel better about myself. I realized that there was some things I may have done, but that I had to do in order to survive, in order to be here today. If not, I wouldn't be here.
Just on a completely practical level, I sleep at night, and I don't have to take a handful of meds to do it.
I'm not taking any medication for anxiety. I'm not taking any sleep aids. I'm not taking any meds. And that is not a giant step, that's a giant leap.
Now I'm a teacher for Project Welcome Home Troops, which is great. Sharing this information, these techniques and the knowledge, seeing the change in people, I think, is the biggest driving force.
About a week before I came on this course, I was in the hospital for 5 days. Major depression. Really didn't give a damn if I lived, you know. I really think that I have improved about 75% in just the last 2 months.
I'm going to keep doing it. I don't know how it works. I don't know why it works, but it works for me.
And that's where this program really probably helped me more than anything, is it kind of gave me myself back, you know.
At the path that I was going prior to having done the exercise with you guys, I don't think I would have made it 10, 20 years. So when you're asking me now 20, 30 years down the line, I'm looking at it as a present, something that's just a gift that's been given to me. Maybe one more chance to get things right.
So this Power Breath workshop is a 5-day workshop that we offer for vets. It's a combination of yoga, meditation, and a very specialized form of rhythmic breathing called the Sudarshan Kriya Yoga technique. Most people at Google know that breathing is one of the main sources of energy, right? You can live for several weeks without food, several days without water, but you can't live for very long without breath. So breath, we all know, is a major source of energy. It's also a major part of our health. About 80% of the toxins that leave the body through the breath. But there's a third mysterious aspect to the breath that allows this workshop to be very powerful. And that is that the breath is a very powerful link between the mind and the body and the emotions. How many people have been at a meeting at Google where you know that somebody's not having a very good day or not having a very good time at the meeting because you look over and they're like, And you're thinking about 5 seconds, I don't want to be in this meeting anymore. How many people have had an experience in or out of Google like that? When you see that, emotions change and the breath changes. We see it often backwards. We see the breath change and we think, okay, there's an emotional change. Any mothers here with small children? Anybody? Right. And so have you ever sung a lullaby to your child and you see the breath getting slower and getting longer and you're thinking, in 30 more seconds, my child is finally going to sleep. So there's this important link, and it's that link that we use in the Power Breath workshop, because most of the time we notice the emotional change and then we notice the change in the rhythm of the breath. But we teach specific rhythms of the breath to the vets, which allow them to come to a centered place no matter what else is going on in their life, and to come back in the present moment. These are people that are trapped in their memories and their physiological reactions to the past. I said at the beginning, these are people that run red lights in Los Angeles because they're afraid there's a bomb at the side of the road. They're not able to live in the present at all. Most of us, our mind swings from the past to the future and sometimes lives in the present, hopefully. But for them, their mind is trapped in the past. And these rhythmic breaths, the Sky Sudarshan Kriya Yoga breath work, not only brings them to the present, but allows the body naturally to begin to let go of trauma and stress, not just in that day, but on a permanent basis. And they referred to some research. There's just been one pilot study done on this program. It was done at the Center for the Study of the Healthy Mind. Dr. Richard Davison, some of you may know him. I think he's actually come and spoken at Google at the University of Wisconsin. And that research showed, with a control group of 10 vets taking the course and 10 vets doing something else, over a period of 7 days, that their symptoms of post-traumatic stress lowered on an average of 40 to 50%. That's interesting, but what is also interesting is that when they measured them 6 months later, the symptoms were still lower. And when they measured them a year later, the symptoms were still lower. Now, it's still too early to know what that pilot means, but it means generally that their experience of their own trauma, the sleeplessness, the hyperarousal, the flash to anger, was lessened during the course, and whether or not they practiced these techniques afterwards, that level of symptom was still lower after 6 months and after a year. So now, 8 years later, we've taught about 1,000 vets, and we are training teachers as fast as we can, because as I said earlier, there's 300,000 to 400,000 people walking around with post-traumatic stress from these wars. And a lot of them don't want to go to be on drugs because the drugs have a lot of side effects, and they mask the symptoms, but they don't really cure the cause. And they don't want to go, especially if they're still in the service, there's a great stigma for going for psychiatric care. So programs like these provide an alternate way of dealing with the post-traumatic stress. And as I said earlier, it's something that they can do by themselves for themselves. So it's a program that the soldiers like a lot. I thought I'd teach you maybe one of the very preliminary forms of breathing, if you'd like to have that demonstrated. I was just at the Aspen Brain Forum, and I thought I made it safely off the stage. And I was just ready to step off the stage, and somebody said, "Can you show us one of the forms of breathing that the soldiers do?" So this is a form of yogic breathing called Bhastrika. How many people would like to learn just a little bit about it? Okay, so sit back in your chairs a little bit, sit up. And we're going to breathe in and out through the nose. This is a form of breathing that will give you a little bit of energy. In Southern California, it's nicknamed the Starbucks breath. So we're going to put our hands in baby fists like this, yeah? And we're going to breathe in, and we're going to allow our hands to go up into what I call the Glory Hallelujah pose. And then we're going to grasp an imaginary bar and breathe out through the nose sharply. Come down. Breathe in and go up. Exhale, come down. And we'll do it in rhythm, and we'll do maybe 10 repetitions. Should we do that? Okay, take a normal breath in and out. See if we can do this together. Ready, begin. In, out, in, out, in, out. Put a little energy into it. And relax, close your eyes, take a transition breath in through the nose and out. And just close your eyes and see if you feel somewhere inside a little bit more energy than you had 10 minutes ago. Open the eyes. You can even do this at your cubicle. If nobody thinks you're looking too strange in the middle of the afternoon. Instead of going to get a cup of coffee, you can do maybe 3 sets of 15 to 20 of these with a little bit of rest in between. Not something you'd like to go home and do for 45 minutes while you're watching TV. No, 3 sets of maybe 10 to 15. I thought maybe too you'd like to experience a kind of guided meditation that we do with the vets. Would you like to do that? Okay. We'll do this for maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and then I'll be around to answer any questions that you have about the program. So anyone who came in late, if you have your cell phones turned to vibrate, that would be great. Can everybody see me okay? So all you have to do with this guided meditation is close your eyes and follow instructions. Let's sit comfortably with both our feet on the floor, spine straight, palms up in the lap, eyes closed. Let's begin by taking a normal breath in through the nose and out. Begin by finding ourselves in this environment, listening to all the noises around us. Conversations from the other room. The hum of the electrical system. And feel that connection between our body and the chair we're sitting on. Now perhaps you're feeling a little bit more in harmony with your environment. Become aware of your physical body. Maybe feeling tired, it may be feeling rested, maybe feeling a little agitated. Could be some aches or pains or twinges, certain parts of the body. Just be with your body just as it is right now. Innocently put your awareness on your right foot. Right knee. Right thigh and hip. Left foot. Left knee, left thigh and hip. Stomach, abdomen, chest, right arm, and shoulder. Left arm, and shoulder. Throat. Face. Between the eyebrows. Top of the head. Whole body. Allow your awareness to flow like a river through your whole body. The top of your head to the soles of your feet. Through your whole body. Become aware of your thoughts. Positive thoughts, negative thoughts. Doesn't much matter. Just watch them flow by like they're in a river, and don't try to control them or judge them in any way. Underneath our thoughts, we all have feelings. Allow yourself to become aware of your feelings. Happy feelings, sad feelings, anxious feelings, angry feelings, peaceful feelings. Whatever kind of feelings are there, just observe them. underneath the bodily sensations and the thoughts and the feelings, there's a deeper place within each of us. Deep and silent like an ocean. Allow yourself to drop into that deeper, silent place. In that deep, silent place, there's a well of peace and joy. So again, put your awareness on your feelings. Become aware of your thoughts. Become aware of your physical body. Take a breath in and let go. Begin to become aware of the environment in which you find yourselves. Feel once again the contact of your body with the seat that you're sitting on. Take another deep breath in. Let go. Begin to stretch a little. You can wiggle your fingers and your toes. Move in your chair a little bit. And taking your own time, as much time as you need, you can slowly and gradually open your eyes. Is good? Great. I forgot to ask if there are any vets present. Anyone here? So whenever I see a vet in uniform at an airport or anywhere else, I always take the opportunity, although it always embarrasses them, to say thank you for your service to our country. I was talking to someone who was born in a foreign country, and they were trying to decide whether they wanted to contribute and support our organization. And they said, well, you know, I give to my home country. I give lots of things to my home country. And I said, well, while you're here in Silicon Valley, it's not your home country that's protecting you. It's the American servicemen and women who have risked their lives. And coming back, they're the people that can really use our help. They've stuck their necks out for us, risked their lives for us. And it's now time for us to be able to help them in whatever way we can. I want to tell you just one or two more stories. From one came up for me during meditation about the vets that I've been lucky enough to work with, and then to tell you why I'm here at Google today. I had a Vietnam vet. He wasn't in this film, but he was a dog handler in Vietnam, which meant that he had a dog that he worked with, and they'd send the dogs into the Viet Cong tunnels, and they'd come out the other end. And one day he sent his dog into a tunnel, and a whole bunch of Viet Cong came out the other end of the tunnel, and they started shooting at him. Wasn't really a combatant, but he had a weapon, and he shot back. And when they did the body count, he had a special weapon, so he knew who had been killed by other people and who he had killed. And one of the people he'd killed, unfortunately, was a 13-year-old Vietnamese girl. And on the last day of this 5-day course, he came up to me and he grabbed me and he shook me. This guy did. He's about 70 years old. And he said, she's gone. She's gone. I'm like, who's gone? And he said, that girl I killed, he said, she's been in my dreams every night for the last 40 years. And last night was the first night I slept through the night and she didn't come back in my dreams. So imagine what it would be like to live a life like that, and then to live a life free of that kind of thing. Another Vietnam vet I taught, when he did this breathing for the first time, he experienced a memory that he'd repressed ever since Vietnam. He'd forgotten completely about it, where a hand grenade had come down in a foxhole that he was in, and he'd thrown the hand grenade up in the air and saved himself and his comrades in the process, and it exploded about 30 feet above his head. And he said during the breathing, not only did he smell the sulfur of the grenade, I think that's a sort of interesting fact, he said, but there was a whole part of his mind that had been trapped behind this repressed memory. He said that started to come out during the course. He had access to it for the first time in 40 years. And he got actually a little angry at the instructors. He said, where were you 40 years ago? He said, my whole life would have been different had I had access to this particular part of my mind. So there's a lot of people out there waiting for us, and a lot of people in American corporations, especially in Silicon Valley, are taking an interest in vets. I spoke to Vets Network at Cisco. I don't know if there's a Vets Network here at Google, but I spoke to one, and they're reaching out to other vets to help other vets. And when I was at Microsoft, they sponsored a course in Seattle. So maybe there's some people in this audience that would like to help. We're a volunteer-based organization. We don't charge the vets for what we do, but that means we rely on lots of different volunteers for lots of different things. So if anybody here thinks that they'd like to get involved and help vets, as I said, there are 300,000 or 400,000 vets out there who need our help, and can use the brain power at Google, I'm sure, to figure out new ways to help reach out to them. I thought I'd just save 5 or 10 minutes, see if anybody has any questions, and there's no question that's impolite or too direct to ask. I'd be really grateful if somebody had a couple of questions that they want to ask me about the program. Yeah.
So at Google, we always think about scaling things. And I'm just wondering, have you tried to get this into the out-processing process within the military organizations themselves?
We have, and there's some people at very high levels. I mean, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff has seen our program and is acting about it. But if you've been in the military, you know things don't happen necessarily at breakneck speed. So yeah, some people at very high levels are aware of us and are watching us. It could be a little while before they. But in the VA, the Veterans Administration for people who've been released from the military, there are different layers of treatment that are like the sort of layers of an onion. and the outermost one of these neighborhood vet centers, which you may be familiar with. And slowly but surely, people at these vet centers are sponsoring courses and sending their people to our courses. And that's our way into the VA, because then the VA hospitals want to do research on us, and then it goes straight up. But it could take a little while. It's all right. I have a little time. And I never thought when we taught our first course that we would have taught 1,000 vets by now. But there's 1,000 down and 300,000 to go, so we have a ways to go. Scalability, there's several factors. I know you're great at analysis here in Google. One is training teachers who are good at working with this population. Vets come in not trusting very many people. They don't trust the government. They don't trust the military. They have a really hard time relating to civilian life because their values and experiences are so different. So you need to find teachers that can, especially vets, and we're training vets to be teachers now, who can reach out and relate to vets. So it takes a certain amount of skill to teach teachers. And also, obviously, finances are a factor, because we have to travel, not only train teachers, but have them travel around to where vets are, and access to government resources and government places. I had somebody call me, it broke my heart, who was in the middle of a PTSD residency program in a VA hospital, and we couldn't get in to teach him. He was like, I need your help, please come and help me, but we couldn't get access to that particular part of the program. So government access, funds, and the ability to train many more teachers. I think that the vets that we teach will become the inheritors of this program. I think it'll eventually be vet run by people who graduated from the program, and I'm really working as hard as I can to make sure that happens as soon as possible.
The 1,000 you've been able to touch and teach, is it regional or global?
It's interesting you say that, because it started out just in the United States, but someone made a documentary film of us in Europe. It was actually about the work of Richard Davison, who did our research, but it included one of our workshops. And so now we're teaching all over Europe, and especially in Eastern Europe and Sarajevo and places like that where there's a lot of PTS. And we just trained our first 2 teachers in Australia. It's also been taught in Russia. It's also been taught in, it's beginning to be taught in South America as well. So it's beginning to be global, but right now it's strongest in the United States. We're the ones who have the most veterans, coming back from the latest wars.
So yes, also thank you very much for what you do. So my stepbrother was in Iraq, and I know for a fact that he suffers from it. He hasn't been diagnosed with PTSD, but he was a medic, and I don't know how to. I believe in my heart this would help him, but I don't know how to approach it. And I was wondering if you could speak of, because there was things in the film of the vets who'd taken the program, of seeing it as hokey and kind of, it's a lot of times associated with like pseudoscience in a way. And how do you introduce it to vets that are where this is a completely new thing and
they're skeptical, right?
Yeah.
The first is that they can go to the website, they can see this film for themselves. And secondly, we can put them, if they write into the website, in touch with a vet who's taken the course. And there's something about vets talking to vets which has instant credibility. This fellow Roger, the one who said, I don't know how it works, I don't know why it works, we send him around, and he just went to a vet center in Texas and sat into a vet's sort of support group and said, my name's Roger, I'm a Vietnam vet, I used to be on 20 different medications, I'm not on any medications anymore, and they're like, where do I sign up? So vets have a lot of credibility, and if we can put him in touch with one who's taken the course, they trust each other. They don't trust very much else in life, but they trust each other. So either the website or I have business cards. If you want to get in touch with me, I'll put him in direct touch with a vet. There has to be at least a little interest on his part. Just if you tell them they can get off their drugs. What they don't tell you about these drugs is that they have many side effects. Some people have been on them for 30 or 40 years, and one of them is sexual dysfunction. They don't talk about it much, but if you can get them up, if they think they can get off those drugs and have a life again, it's pretty motivating.
You thought that it was a wonderful way of servicing people who were returning from war. How did you get into meditation?
Way back when?
Yeah.
I was teaching a program called Outward Bound. Some of you may know about Outward Bound, but it's a program to take people out in the wilderness and develop skills, self-confidence and things. And I was teaching kids from the inner city, and it was a really high-stress situation. And we didn't have any time off, and the kids were demanding, and you're pretty exhausting all the time in a wilderness environment, keeping them safe. And I noticed that one of my colleagues had more energy than I did. His sense of humor was indestructible. He gave more to the kids. He got more back. And so, it being the 60s, I took him aside and asked him what drug he was on, what he was doing. And he said, it's this thing that I do twice a day for 20 minutes, this meditation. And I said, that sounds really weird. If it sounds weird in 2010, it sounded much stranger back in the late 60s. And then he did something for which I'll be forever grateful, because he was a really good friend. He sort of put his arm on my shoulder. He says, I know it sounds weird. He said, but for my sake, he said, check it out. And that was in the summer before my freshman year in college. Luckily, I found a meditation instructor that year, my freshman year in college, and I started because of my friend. And that's how I started, and it sort of went on from there.
The courses you mention are really for the vets, right? What about for the civilians? Like, I'm really interested in starting on the path of meditation. I agree that, in the 15 minutes, I am more calmer. When I stepped into this room, I was very anxious about a lot of things. I am way more calmer, and I feel that, I have certain solutions to my issues now. So I'm really wondering, how can I get introduced to it and kind of pursue it?
There's many kinds of meditation. I understand you already have meditation, mindfulness being taught here. This breathing meditation is an especially powerful introductory version, of meditation, or introduction to meditation. For people like the vets, something as subtle as mindfulness is beyond their grasp. But the breathing meditation brings you to a very, very deep place very quickly. And you're lucky that you have some people in Google that actually teach that form of meditation. One of them's right over there, Mark Ball. He's one of my I respect Mark's teaching more than many, many other people that I know. You're very lucky to have him at Google, and I believe he offers courses in this breathing meditation. Is that right?
Yes.
Periodically. So see Mark if you're interested. We do teach civilians. We also I teach a program that teaches in corporations. I've taught at Harvard Business School and Wharton. And a lot of people are understanding now that the greatest resource that any company like Google has is the resource that's in here. And we don't always have full access to that, right? You didn't have full access to that resource when you walked in here today, right? Because of your anxiety and whatever. So whatever a company can do to maximize people's access to that resource is going to show up in many, many ways for the benefit of the company. So when I'm not teaching vets, sometimes I teach people in corporate environments around the country. Once again, I'd like to thank Ruchika and her colleagues and everybody at Google for having me here today. Thank you very much.